All right, have my first coffee of the morning. Said I found another shooting story, um, written down by Bobbie Short again, and I think I got some time. I can do this quick before I get my day going. And I'll tell you flat out, I read a handful of the comments on the previous read that I did for Bobbie, and it seems it was received fairly well. It's funny. I noticed one or two characters on there that just went straight to attempting to trash her character instantly, publicly. And that's all they were concerned about, was tearing down Bobbie's character in the comment section. I find that so bizarre. I deleted their asses. They're blocked. They're gone forever. But it's so bizarre in this Bigfoot Sasquatch community how cutthroat and vicious they all seem to be. It's really quite odd. I don't understand it myself. I guess I could probably understand it more if I looked into psychology a little more and looked into it and looked into what made their brains tick, but I don't have that time. But it can make me kind of growl. It makes me growl to see a woman get attacked. Basically anybody just get blatantly attacked. I mean, she was a very hardworking woman, had her own personal views on what these things are, which is fine. Everybody can have their own view, right? And like I always say to everybody, just take from all of it what you need. Just take what you need to fill in your puzzle. If there's a missing piece to the puzzle and something shared here, take it and use it. How hard is it? So that's why it's kind of surprising and it's confusing for me to watch so many people want to discredit someone so fiercely, and they don't want them to speak when all they have to do is walk away. It's really weird. But yeah, I just gotta. One of my soft spots is the attacking bullies. I don't like them in this lifetime. I'll admit it, it's my weakness. I want to get them, right? I want to stand up for people, and when you know firsthand, when the dozens of people you trust for your life fill you in with the honest details of how some of these absolute scumbags, like that one in California, what's his name resemble? Money Taker. He went way out of his way and really, really created a bad time for Bobbie Short. And if anybody of you ever run into him, maybe you should ask him about that publicly and see what he has to say about that, attacking a woman with all he has. And it's people like that I just make me want to growl. Anyway, before I start going off on a tangent, as sometimes I can, I'm going to read another one here this morning. And for all you out there, I strongly suggest, it doesn't matter where you go or what you read or what you listen to, take from shares from anybody on the planet, take from it what you need or don't need, and leave it at that. All right? To go out of your way to try to silence another human being or trash them and get people against them intentionally because you don't agree with their views, or maybe they're possibly revealing something you don't want revealed. That's not too good. That's bad juju. But anyway, this is titled The Alaska Shooting. In 2005, I collected a report from a native-born man whose occupation was logging in the Klawock, Alaska region. I thought the way it unfolded was quite interesting. A native Inupiat fellow, 15 years on the job and never had an accident either. He was never late and had an excellent work record, yet he suddenly quit his job one morning and never went back. After a year away from felling the trees of Klawock, he relaxed enough to tell somebody a story. Luckily, that somebody was me. His unusual story began as he arrived at work early one morning. Both he and another fellow logger, I believe his name was something like Took-a-Talk, began their daily routine. Suddenly they stopped cold, stood up and listened. They heard whistling back and forth from one side of the logging access road to the other. This road ended at a dead end, which was the staging area for the tree cutting operation. His note read like this, spelling edited for readability. We heard whistles before many times. We stood focused near the Desna Elva expecting to see the crew coming. But we first saw a giant come out of the trees, and like he stands there looking at the two of us. Like we stare back, and like here came another one. Like the Ekchu. They're tall, about 9 feet tall. I am 5'3". They had hair on their body that was brown, light-colored brown. All of them were light brown color, see? They whistled, and 2 more of their kind in the trees come out onto the road. Then seeing them scared us, and I lost my nerve from fright. I shout, "Ambush!" We think ambush, like they're coming for us, like why else? There was no way out but down that road. It was an ambush. They could have come at us from any direction, but they decided to block the road. We start running to the truck, where we grab the rifle from the gun rack. He takes aim and fires off 2 rounds. One falls down. He hit it good, in the chest, we think. But now here comes a 3rd and 4th one. The one on the ground is screaming and rolling in the dirt. We think a female. The whistling stops. We stare. I'm shaking. They are so much bigger than us. We don't know what to do next. We don't know what they want, and the one we downed keeps on screaming and rolling around in the road. I can't stand to hear it scream. This screams like a man tortured to death. We talked about trying to stop it with a headshot. The screams were terrible in my ears. It was a bad scene, real bad. The bearded one stopped whistling. They gathered around the one we shot that was on the ground. Now here come 2 more of them, both with gray beards, and these were even taller and wider. They were gesturing, kind of wild-like, saying words not in our language. My partner sets up for a headshot, but then he changes his mind, aims to the air, and fires a warning shot. It echoes in the valley. Now the 2 biggest guys, they grab the hurt one under his arms and carry it, half dragging into the timber. See, just like that. We stand there watching, and I tell Joe, "That's it, I quit. Those guys will be coming back for us. I ain't waiting around for them." This was bad, man. This is bad, like effing crazy. This is like a man's worst nightmare, and I can't take it. The whistlers will come back for us. We should get out of here. Like you see, we were for sure outnumbered. We might be able to shoot a couple, but we've only 1 rifle, and there is more than 6 of them, all over 8 feet tall. 2 maybe over 10. They could surround us like easy, man. We'd be dead ducks before we could reload. I know this. I hear stories. I shout, "Let's get!" We heard screams going off in the distance, so we knew they were moving away from us, or at least some were moving away. Then it gets quiet, eerie-like, no screams in the distance. I get back in the truck to think, what's next? We need to go. Can't stay because the whistlers will come for us. Sure enough, we expect they will come for us. We waited in the log truck for about 10 minutes. We argue over what to do, and then comes the foreman and a few men from the crew who heard the shots, and I tell them, "I quit. I can't stay here. I have a family and 4 children." When I go home that day and leaving, I see the blood on the road, a puddle of blood. To my wife, I explain I never go back again. The whistlers will be looking for me. It's the code. It is clear in this narrative that the Sasquatch reacted physically to being shot. The informant described the pain it felt. The other interesting thing he said was about the numbers of Sasquatches that were in that grouping. I don't think I've heard that many being observed before, not at one time, and not of that height either. The informant told me he missed the income from the job, but will never go back to cutting timber, and he said that the thought of seeing the whistlers again caused nightmares. The creature description he gave was typical except for the lightness of the color, and that they were frighteningly tall and bearded. It is rare to get a report where the beard is mentioned. Facing a half a dozen 9-foot-tall beings would get anybody's attention. I did remember to ask him if he knew where the Sasquatch was hit, and he believed a round hit it in mid-chest. Wondering what came of the creature, he said there was no way he wanted to find out. Continuing on, he said, "They was twice my size, and I never knew how many they was. 3 to 5 for sure. 2 bigger ones that came out. So then that is 7 of them, and we were outnumbered with 1 rifle. I hear them whistle in my nightmares, and every time someone whistles, I see them again. I cannot stand to hear the high-pitched scream. There are rumors around that 2 of the men were killed in the months that followed under mysterious circumstances. Like the fellows I worked with, don't get hit by swinging logs. It don't happen. I didn't want to hear the details of it, so I cannot tell you if it was retaliation or not." During the phone interview, I could hear the man's voice falter as he hurriedly ended the phone call. His fear level had not subsided much even years later. He did say that the rifle Joe used was a 30-06 Savage Model 111, bolt action, standard ammo. It was kept as assurance, mostly against grizzlies, or for hunting purposes. He did not know what happened to his logging friend Joe. During one of those conversations, the subject of bears came up. The Inupiat claimed to have shot an 8-foot, 900-pound Alaskan brownie one year. It was after his hunting dog's pups. The appearance of a brownie ought to terrify any man, but by comparison to the Sasquatch story, he talked calmly about it. I tried contacting him again in 2008, but the phone was disconnected. Well, that was quite interesting. And there's another one right away. We'll slide right into the next one, titled The Wyoming Shooting. The second Wyoming incident was graciously provided my website by Peter Byrne. In the early winter of 1968, two young men from Marshalltown, Iowa, set out in a car on a hunting expedition to Wyoming. Near Jackson Hole, they shot a coyote out of the car window, and when it did not go down, they got out of the car and followed the blood trail in the snow to complete the task. They scrambled up over the hill beside the road and stepped dead in surprise at the sight of a large, dark figure standing in the snow and facing them about 300 feet away. As the thinking went in 68, it looked like a gorilla to them, and thinking it must be an escaped animal, with maybe a reward on its head, one of them, they would not say which one, took aim with the scope 30-06 and shot it in the chest. It fell over backwards in the snow, and when this happened, they ran up to it. The thing was lying on his back, arms by its sides. It was about 6.5 feet in length, heavy built, and covered with hair, but with the face bare of hair. The face was very human, with a short nose and wide mouth. The eyelids were fluttering, and the fingers were opening and closing. Blood oozed from a hole in the chest and was gathering in the sunken hollow of the chest. The creature made no sound. Horrified that they had shot a human, which they thought might have been a mutant offspring of a nearby family, maybe hidden for years, but alas escaped, they turned and ran down the hill and jumped in the car and drove nonstop all the way to Marshalltown, Iowa. 7 years went by, and probably mostly in fear of prosecution, they told no one of the incident. Then one of them whispered it to his father, who told his mother, and so in 1975 it came to me through Peter Byrne. The two men were Marshalltown residents, Lyle Bingham and Mike Burton. I contacted them and promised them confidentiality, and then submitted detailed questionnaires, which they completed and returned to me. I then asked if they would come to Jackson Hole and meet me and take me to where they had the incident. Burton said no, but Bingham agreed, and so I sent him an air ticket, and a little later we met in Jackson Hole. Then he took me where he believed this place was. However, having been there during the brief time of this incident for only a few minutes, and as it was now 7 years later, and in the summer without snow, he was unable to verify the actual place. He said that it was on a ridge running down to the road at an angle, somewhere south of Jackson Hole. However, I found out later when I went back and did an extensive search that there are several similar ridges in the area, any one of which could have been the actual ridge where the incident took place. Bingham, who I remember as a pleasant and incredible young man, left and went back to Marshalltown, but a little later returned to Jackson Hole and then moved to Ladner, Wyoming, where I became a school teacher. We kept in touch for a while and then lost contact. Yesterday I tracked Bingham down via Google and called him and talked to him. The Lyle Bingham I talked to yesterday lives in Lander, Wyoming, and was formerly from Marshalltown, and had recently retired from school teaching, and when questioned seemed vague about the incident. But he adamantly denied ever having been part of it, said it was all a story made up by Burton, said he had never met me, had never filled in or signed a questionnaire, and had never been flown by me to Jackson Hole. The above notes, to my best of my memory, are from the original questionnaire and from conversations with Bingham in Jackson Hole. Burton's whereabouts are unknown to me. Peter C. Byrne. It should be noted here that a friend of Burns, Blake Eckert, read the story and also tracked Bingham down. The man denied any knowledge of the incident, and I imagine fear of prosecution. Was the motive. All right. So, let's move into another one. I haven't a clue what's coming in these documents, you guys. All right, I'm just flipping the pages and letting her rip. So, Will there be other question and answer ones directly from Bobbie with other people? I'm sure there will. There's a pile of them. I don't know how many pages there are here. There is dozens. All right. Now here's another one. The Arkansas shooting, Johnson County, Arkansas, between Low Gap and Harmony. In October 2002, the informant was driving alone in a Nissan pickup truck about three-quarter mile into the hollow, where he parked without turning the truck around. He was alone and did not lock the truck. For this trip, the witness borrowed an old Remington semi-automatic 22 caliber rifle, which is equipped with a 3x9 1-inch scope, which he used that day to hunt squirrels. He walked up the old road and noticed sign and a number of broken branches that were not there before. He could see the trees were not simply broken by the weight of a bear. In fact, the tops were twisted and all were pointed in the same direction. He was baffled, but continued walking up the old road. He could not help but think about the oddities. He was soon within 150 yards of the truck. At that point, he heard a grunt coming out from the woods to his left. He looked in the direction of the sound and noticed movement. He froze and watched closely. He observed a large figure in a squatting position behind a very thin veil of brush about 35 yards away. He thought that he was seeing a cinnamon-faced bear because of its color. The Sasquatch was squatting on its haunches with its knees spread slightly. Its two long arms extended between its knees and with balled-up fists resting on the ground in front of his feet. It stared directly at him and slowly rocking its body side to side, making short, grunting, clicking, chirping sounds with its mouth. The witness stated he was frozen in shock. Suddenly he was overcome by an intense fear, thinking the creature might charge him. He thought from its stance it was poised to spring off the ground toward him. He said by automatic reflex, he raised the rifle and in a split second fired. In this statement, he said he attempted to shoot the animal just below its chin, hitting the spine to disable it. On a previous hunting trip, the witness killed a 375-pound black bear with one .22 caliber long rifle hollow point bullet about the same range by hitting it in the center of the neck and the spine. That's a tough one for me to swallow personally, but we'll carry on reading. But this time, the round hit the creature, causing it to stand upright with the arms hanging down its sides. The creature turned and began running up the slope of the ridge. As soon as the animal wheeled and started crashing through the smaller timber on the slope of the ridge, the witness stated he emptied the rifle into the back of the Sasquatch as it made an attempt to get away. He stated he thought the rifle held 15 long rifle cartridges. He was sure that at least 7 of those rounds struck its body squarely. About the time the rifle clicked empty, he heard the animal stop running. The creature was at a point directly up on the ridge above from his truck. The hunter was fully aware he was standing there with an empty rifle. He bolted to the truck as fast as he could run. He threw the borrowed gun into the bed of the truck and jumped inside the cab. At that point, he heard something crashing through the timber again, and it sounded to him as if the animal was running toward the truck. He started the truck and threw it in reverse to turn around. He backed the truck into a tree, but quickly put the truck in forward gear and tried to turn around in the very narrow road. In his haste, he struck another tree with the front of the truck. After banging the truck through the timber and over large rocks, he finally got it back on the road and drove at breakneck speed out of the hollow. He has not hunted that hollow again. He described the Sasquatch as covered with reddish-brown hair that in most places appeared to be 3 inches long. On the forearms, the hair appeared to be short and not as thick as that on the rest of the body. The animal had no visible neck or ears, and although he stared at the face, he was unable to discern any facial features because of the halo of hair around the face. After he fired the first shot, the animal leapt to an upright position. He noticed the hair on its head and shoulders was noticeably lighter in color than the hair elsewhere. He also noticed that the hair on its knees were discolored. He thought those areas were covered with a light coating of mud. He said when running, the legs appeared to be thick and powerful, but slightly bowed. It appeared to be 7 feet tall, approximately 400 pounds, with a muscular build. He said, for its height, the upper body did not look disproportionately large. The witness said he could not see breasts or genitalia to determine the sex. The legs of the Sasquatch were noticeably bent, but its long strides were fluid. Tal Bronco Bryant, Arkansas, 2007. Well, I don't know. That's I guess that was told to Bobbie from another place. What does it say? Site graciously provided by Tal Bronco and Mike McLean, the Alabama Bigfoot website. So I guess what we have here is numerous documented incidents of shooting these things, these beings, these people, whatever you want to call them. So it goes on. It's not really ending. All right, let me read this one more, and then gotta get going out the door here. This one is titled "The Montana Shooting." In the summer of 1999, a story made the rounds in the Bigfoot community about a Montana rancher who claimed his men shot and buried a Bigfoot, apparently because the creature had been stalking and killing his livestock. In the beginning, the rancher claimed calves were being killed and dismembered by a grizzly. It was difficult to determine by the sign exactly how the calves died. The head and the neck were removed from the body. Fearing a marauding grizzly might have rabies, he dispatched his foreman on the 10th of May that year. The foreman's son plus a ranch-owned Karelian bear dog to a ridgetop stakeout where the herd was grazing the mountain. They were equipped with rudimentary night vision and cell phone contact with the main house. 10 days passed, but the bear didn't make an appearance. On May 20th, his very nervous mestizo phoned the main house with the news that the Karelian cornered a giant hair-covered beast near Devil's Peak, a rocky outcropping on the west side of the mountain. When the two mestizos caught up to the dogs, they raised their rifles and shot the beast to death, but it wasn't a bear. It was a hair-covered figure of a man, but not a man they recognized. The giant had in its possession a small white-faced Hereford calf with a broken neck, bleeding profusely from its nose. The rancher ordered the two men to stay in the mountains another week to make sure no more were in the area. A week's provisions were dispatched by jeep, but the returning wrangler told his boss it wasn't a grizzly but a Sasquatch. Still, the rancher was slow to believe it wasn't a grizzly. When the news of the incident got around, two flathead wranglers walked off the job. Though I don't hold much hope that many of these stories told on network television episodes contain much truth, they did tell a much better version of the Montana incident on their webpage. The stories were similar. According to the rancher, no federal agents showed up to spirit away the remains of the Sasquatch, as told in the television version, because the rancher made no official report of the incident, preferring to keep the incident on ranch property. His contention with his men was his men had shot a grizzly that had taken down a calf. He attributed the federal agent story to television dramatization, or a similar incident that happened elsewhere. The television story led its audience to believe there were feds in the scene, but that never happened. Years have gone by and I haven't heard of any trouble in the region since, and apparently no retaliation from the family Bigfoot. If there are any Bigfoot relatives, none made an appearance. He may have been a renegade making his way. He may have been a renegade making his way with a sure thing. Cite C.L. Schlager. Well, there's a note here. She adds, if the Sasquatch had special powers in any of the shootings cited, none were observed using it. Apparently the Sasquatch was not observed shifting to another dimension or visibly dematerializing. The highly armed mestizos were not zapped unconscious, nor did infrasound cause the rifles to malfunction. No telepathic communication was mentioned, which is odd behavior for a life form perceived by certain individuals in research to be equipped with specialized abilities not of this earth realm. The rancher filing the Montana incident was certain they shot it dead, and that its body was buried with no hocus-pocus, strange lights, or whirling sounds from a UFO. During the interview, the rancher said there had been UFO sightings reported in that county in the late 70s, but none were reported by the mestizos working the range. I'm told Mexican caballeros are generally straightforward, clear-thinking individuals, short, stocky, strong men who make great wranglers. They're overall a no-nonsense bunch of hard-working ranch hands who work quietly alongside the flatheads. Huh. Interesting. But here we go. There's a short one added on here right below. We'll do just one more and then I'm out of here. In a similar story, this time a sheep rancher in Montana. Bigfoot enthusiast Randall Chapman, whose screen name in the old days used to be PHX Wolf, posted this message to a GCBRO board in the summer of 2010 titled Montana Bigfoot Kill. It was in the Prairie Mountain Range in the Great Falls, Montana region. Randy continues from here. I was listening to Coast to Coast on Friday night when a caller from Montana called in and told George Nuri about a friend whose father had something stealing his sheep. One night at dusk, the father waited for whatever it was to show up in hopes of killing it. Apparently something big and black showed up and went down on all fours after his sheep. The father shot the thing, killing it. The father went over to the thing and found it had a human-like face. The son advised his father to call Fish and Game Department. After not hearing from his father, the son tried to pay his father a visit. The Army National Guard had closed the mountain area where his father lived. The son then called his father to find out what was going on, and the father told the son that nothing had been shot. Another friend of this guy confirmed that the area had been closed by the Army, as he had tried to go ATV riding and could not. Now, I'm not saying I believe this, but has anyone else heard of this? Bobbie goes on to say, my response would be, if nothing had been shot, why did the Army personnel show up? This is probably another incident where authorities cleaned up such events and wiped the slate clean, as if it never happened. In some other cases, delinquent bears are blamed. Site GCBRO, permission Jim Lansdale. All right, there we go. Yeah, I don't know. Take from all this what you're going to take from. All right, you guys. Obviously, none of us were there. Who knows who's listening who may know some of these people that were mentioned? I don't know. And if you want, often you hear about people with the arrow killing, that single shot arrow killing in that previous read. And many people talk about how many times they heard about these beings taking rounds and they run away and taking rounds and it didn't do anything to them. Well, just so you guys know, this happens with all game animals. Doesn't matter what size they are as well. Elephants have been taken down with a single arrow numerous times by bow hunters. Compound or recurve, it doesn't matter. What if it was a compound or a recurve? Either bow has killed every single game animal in North America, including polar bears, grizzly bears, brown bears, you name it. A broadhead, a razor-sharp arrowhead will kill anything and at times very quickly. Well, I, being a professional big game guide, you wouldn't believe some of the things that I've seen happen in the past when it comes to stopping power with large animals and even small animals. I've seen deer, like a 150-pound deer, take an abnormal beating and go forever, okay? Whereas other times, I've seen a moose shot at 400 yards with a .243, which isn't a very big round, and then it dropped in his tracks. Other times, I've seen a moose take 5 rounds from a 300 Weatherby Magnum, and I had to find that moose an hour later and finish it off myself. So same with grizzly bears. I've seen grizzly bears take one shot and dump, and I've seen grizzly bears get adrenalized and take numerous shots and keep going and going and going. So it all varies. It all varies on the animal itself, the state it's in, the emotional state it's in. Is it adrenalized? Where the rounds are hitting it. There's a whole bunch of different factors that add together to whether or not any type size of animal is dropped. Even human beings, if you can look up some of those creepy police videos, how many times we've seen a human being taking the clip of a freaking handgun all over the chest and all over the torso body and still getting a piece of the cop as they're coming at him, right? So I'm just giving that for a little bit of thought for a lot of people that are questioning how one arrow could take down a beast so quickly when you have heard that they have taken so many rounds from firearms and took off. So there's your answer.